Welcome to episode 65 of the Fit, Strong Women Over 50 podcast. Hi, I'm Jill. Welcome to our podcast for the Becoming Ellie community, where we focus on fitness, health, and food for women over 50.
I'm Chris. If you're a new listener, you may be wondering why this community is called Becoming Ellie. Ellie was the Norse goddess of aging, who, when challenged to a wrestling match with Thor, surprised everyone by winning. Jill and I decided we wanted to be fit and strong too, like Ellie.
Chris and I started on our fitness journeys a while ago. Between the two of us, we cover running, biking, strength training, and yoga. We do work in some fun activities as we go along, and I have to say it's been a fun journey.
Yeah. One of the things that makes this journey a bit more enjoyable is knowing that we're not the only women out there trying to do this. We decided the best way to find the support was to create a place for us to meet with other women.
So we created a website, becomingellie.com, which has over 200 free articles. We also started a private Facebook group where we can share our accomplishments and ask each other for help.
Yes, and today's episode is a talk with a friend that we've made through the Becoming Ellie community on Facebook. It's a private group, and it's a great way to get to meet Ren in a different way.
Yes, Ren Powell lives in Norway and lives an active life and deals with many of the same issues we all deal with. Working out, adjusting for injury, figuring out how to eat.
So let's get started. Ren Powell is a poet, playwright, translator, theater maker, and teaching artist mentor. She's a native Californian and now a Norwegian citizen settled on the west coast of Norway.
Ren, you've been a member of the Becoming Ellie Facebook group for a while now. It's really nice to actually talk to you live. Thanks for talking with us today.
Oh, thank you for the invitation. It's very exciting. I've really enjoyed listening to the podcasts. I feel isolated quite often, and I don't have very many older role models to look up to or even people my own age. So it helps so much to hear other women talk about how they're handling this.
Well, that's great. Welcome to the podcast. I know that, we've been talking about becoming Ellie because Ellie is the Norse goddess of aging. So you live in Norway. That's pretty cool, right? One of the first posts that you made to our Becoming Ellie group was a gorgeous photo on top of a mountain. Do you actually live in the mountains or do you climb mountains?
I live in what is actually Norway's breadbasket. It's a very flat area that's mostly heather and moorlands, but we're 5-minute drive to the beach and about an hour to the real mountains, but we can hike to tops and peaks from here.
Oh, nice.
We do go hiking whenever we can. And that particular photo was taken further up north, though, on the plateau on Hardanger. So that's an untouched area of wilderness. I'm assuming that's what that photo was.
Yeah, it does look untouched. It looks very, very remote.
Yeah, it was exciting. That was my honeymoon, if I'm remembering it's the right photo. My husband and I got married when I was 50 for not the first time. And we decided to go on a 7-day backpack hiking trip with tents across the plateau. And it was really wonderful because we just walked all day long. On the last day when we headed back towards the car park, about 1 kilometer before we got to the car park, we could smell tires on the cars. We could smell the nastiness that we'd had a week away from. Your senses shift entirely. It was a shock to come home.
I guess because I never noticed the smell of tires, but you're right. When you're out in nature, in the woods, it's a whole different experience, isn't it?
Yeah. And up there's not even trees.
Oh.
It's too high, really. You don't see forests. There was a lot of snow. We saw kind of bloody patches where the elk had given birth and things. So
wow.
It's a really different landscape up there.
Wow.
It sounds very remote.
It is, except that the Norwegian, I believe it's sponsored by the government. There's the Norwegian Tourist Organization. They have these cabins And you can actually hike. You don't have to bring a tent. You can hike from cabin to cabin. They're very rustic, and you sleep in dorm rooms basically with other people usually.
So sort of like on the Appalachian Trail where they have the places where people can stop and shelter, camp overnight.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
Some of them have food. There are people who work there. And then others are just places you borrow the key before you leave to go on your hike. And they have some tinned food in case you forgot yours or lose it or are starving to death so that you can get tinned food there. And they don't have anyone working at them. So it's there's a lot of trust. When I heard about this when I first came to Norway, I was amazed that the country shared things like that.
Wow. That was your honeymoon.
That was our honeymoon, 7 days up
Wow. That
hiking.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Forging streams. And I think I carried 25 kilos. I think he carried 30.
Great. You mentioned to me a while ago that you signed up for an obstacle run with some of your colleagues and that you're the oldest on the team.
Yeah. I ran a marathon once and I might run one again. My stepdaughter has asked me to run the one in France with all the food with her next year, if that's allowed. But I don't have an ambition to run another marathon. But half marathons I love. Every year, for 3 years now, my husband and I have gone to Northumberland and run the trail run up there for a half marathon. And I've always wanted to do one of those fun obstacle courses where you climb and get muddy.
Right.
My colleagues, who are all drama teachers, agreed to do it. And I am older by at least 20 years.
Oh.
So I'm 54. And I think maybe the oldest one might be 32. And then down as young as 27.
So you're setting the pace, aren't you?
One of my colleagues is the same age as my son. So, but because of Corona, it was canceled. So we've rolled over our tickets until next year. So it's still on the books and I still plan to do it.
Okay. So you're not having to actively train for it right now?
No, fortunately, because I've had some issues since Corona because of stress that I haven't been able to exercise normally until I had a lot of MRIs to make sure that my neck, there was nothing seriously wrong with my neck. I was forbidden to do anything for a little while, but it's sorted out now.
Wow.
So now I can start running again.
Well, you're both a runner and a yoga practitioner, correct? Can you tell us about your fitness life? You know, what you do, how you fit it into your schedule?
Yeah. Can I say a little bit about why I started?
Oh, please. Yeah.
That would be great.
I have some body issues and some things that maybe border on disorders when it comes to having a healthy relationship with food. I had a grandmother who equated being thin with being morally good. And it was a big deal for her. She was always thin. And my aunts and my mother weren't. And she would be very judgmental about it. In fact, when I moved to Norway and we talked once a week, the first question she would ask me is, so what do you weigh now?
Wow.
My grandmother was a very loving woman and supported me. And I don't want to give the wrong impression, but that one issue was how she measured femininity and success and morality kind of all wrapped up in one.
So she equated being thin with being sort of virtuous.
Yeah.
And successful.
Yeah, with having self-discipline.
Yeah. So if you were overweight, it was because you were lazy or didn't work hard enough.
Yeah, or that you just couldn't stop eating because you didn't have any self-discipline. I think she thought of it the way a lot of people unfortunately think of drug addicts or something. She didn't see any kind of gray space in between there. She just thought it was a failing in character.
Well, that would definitely put sort of a twist on things, both for your mother and your aunts, as well as yourself.
Yeah, I think it was a really painful thing. I don't know where she got it or where it came from for her. We never talked about it because I don't think I ever understood. Mm-hmm. It just was part of my everyday. So it wasn't until she passed away that I realized, my goodness, every time I talked to her, she asked me what I weighed.
Well, maybe something in her past.
Yeah.
But it definitely can cause some issues in your own mind about your body and how you feel about it and eating habits and things like that, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was difficult for me. I think in order for her to love me and approve of me, I needed to stay thin. And I wasn't always thin. So I was thin in my 20s. I ran in my 20s for fun. I never ran track or competed, but I would run in the evenings after university classes and things. But when I moved to Norway and had children, breastfeeding, I got really thin really fast.
Oh, yeah.
But in my 30s, I started putting on weight very slowly. I was teaching, but I wasn't teaching movement at the time very much. And I was working as a writer and a translator full time. It got to where I went to the store. I was invited to a dinner and I tried to buy a new dress and nothing at the store fit.
Oh, I've been there.
Yeah.
That's not a fun day, is it?
No. And at the time, the stores in Norway didn't carry anything bigger than a 42. I think that's like a 14 American size.
Mm-hmm.
I was upset about that. But then I was sitting in the bathtub one evening and I pushed my hand for some reason. I pushed my fingers on my thigh and realized I had no muscle, that my fingers kind of could go all the way through all of the flesh to the bone. And I panicked and thought, I have a degenerative muscle disease. There's something wrong with me.
How old were you at that point?
I was 44.
Okay.
I was 44.
Yeah.
So I decided I was going to start running again before I went to the doctor.
Yeah.
And my knees hurt. So I started doing research and decided to run barefoot. I read, of course, that book everyone was reading at the time, Born to Run.
Yep,
and
right.
Yeah, so I bought myself some Vibram 5-toed shoes and started running. And I found I didn't trip anymore when I ran in those shoes. It was great. I learned how to run again. And my knees gradually got stronger. I started out 10 minutes out, 10 minutes in, and built up to a marathon within a year. Not at the same time, but about the same time, a little bit afterward, I have a mood disorder. So I'd been taking medication and I got an allergy to the medicine, so I couldn't take it anymore. So I started researching about food and mood and came across some studies about epileptics and bipolar and ketogenic diets. This was before anyone heard of keto or it was a thing or a fad or whatever it is. It was the medical ketogenic diet that children go on if they can't have medicine. So I started researching into that. I'm a bit of a nerd. I found Mark's Daily Apple and I found Whole30.
Okay.
I went Whole30 for 30 days and my life changed. My mood was stable. I felt fantastic. And I swear to you, I have never intentionally ingested as much as a taste of ketchup since that day.
Is that right? Wow.
For 10 years, I have not had, on purpose, any artificial sugars. I do honey. I'm careful about it, but I do honey. And the only thing I do that's not acceptable for Whole30 is I do drink wine.
Oh, okay. Let me ask you something, because I knew that epileptic children were often put on a keto diet, but I had never heard about mood disorders being treated that way.
No, I had stumbled onto a streaming of a Johns Hopkins University researcher who was trying to get funding to continue her research into this. But the idea is that epilepsy, schizophrenia, and bipolar disorder have similarities in the way that the brain is functioning.
Oh.
It's kind of a storm, and it expresses itself quite differently in those three disorders, but it has enough similarities that she wanted to start doing research into, well, what happens if we don't trigger the seizures? Does this help if we don't trigger other things?
Interesting. Wow.
And she had very positive results, but they can't get funding for that. There's too much money in, I mean, I hate to say that, but
there's a lot of money in drugs, right? In pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
I've been dealing with skin issues. I've sort of discovered the same thing. If I start really looking into it, there are people that are talking and some research trying to be done on diet, lifestyle issues for curing or improving your skin.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the dermatologists will say there's no correlation with diet because there have because there are no studies proving it. But the reason why there are no studies proving it is because there are no studies being funded to research it. And so they come out and say, well, there's no studies that prove this, so diet's not connected. But what it really means is that nobody wants to pay for studies on diet and skin health.
Yeah. And as long as we're complaining about studies, how many studies study men only and not women?
Absolutely. And also men only in the ages of 23 to 26 or something.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, hopefully the world's changing a little bit, but wow.
Yeah.
Back to the running for a minute. So you typically run half marathon. That's your favorite race?
Yeah.
Distance?
Yeah. Occasionally a couple years, I've run an 8.5 kilometer run that's a local run around a lake. So the first time I did it, it took me, I'm a very slow runner, by the way, extremely slow runner. So the first time it took me an hour really to get all the way around. And my goal 2 years later was to run 5 minutes faster. That was a modest goal. And I cut off more than 15 minutes. So I was thrilled with that.
How did you improve your speed?
Intervals.
Yes.
So my husband's a fan of intervals. So we run together every morning. We run a stretch that is, our normal morning run is 4K. When we're training, we bump it up to 6K. And we do 300 meters at a normal tempo and then full gas 300 meters. And then we just alternate. And weightlifting, we do just basically the big four: bench press, military press, squats, and deadlifts.
You do, squats?
Deadlifts, military, and a bench press or a chest press.
Yeah.
Can you explain what a military is? I'm familiar with squats and deadlifts, but I'm not sure I call it the same thing.
No, I think it's called something else. It's the one where you lift it over your head and then back down to your chest. So overheads, I don't know, an overhead push.
Overhead press.
Yeah.
That's what I call it. Yeah, somebody calls it that. But military, okay. So those are your big four for strength training. That's great.
So do you do that at home? Do you have bars?
Yeah. We're really fortunate to have a bizarrely large house, and we have a whole room that's a really good sized training room with a full set of weights, and I have a treadmill. We recently bought a row machine during COVID.
Oh, nice.
So that's a full gym. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And I have an outside yoga room that I did during COVID. I finally got it finished with the padded floor. It's an open air room with a plexiglass roof.
Oh, nice.
Oh, I bet that's just wonderful for yoga.
It is. It's really nice. So we sit out there and we have a cup of coffee in the morning, and then we do a 26-minute flow that I designed. And then we go for a run. And then we come home, he eats breakfast, I write for a little while, and then we head off to work.
A 26-minute flow, like a vinyasa flow where you do the sun salutation?
Yeah, I can't do the kind of A and B series because I have a little bit of calcification in my shoulder and that many chaturangas. I think there's like 50.
Oh, gee.
Yeah, it's too many for me. So I made a flow that kind of cuts a few of the, I think I have 3.
Yeah.
But that I get all the forward bends, the back bends, the headstand. I get everything that I need out of it in the morning.
Beautiful. That's great.
I'm going back to the weightlifting. How often do you do that?
We do it twice a week. But this year we're shifting it up now. The school year just started this week. So we're right in the middle of looking at our schedules and making a new one for the coming year. But we've talked about 4 days a week now, but only doing lower body one day, upper body the next. That way we have 2 rest days in between each muscle group. So if we do legs on Monday, we won't do legs again until actually Thursday.
So twice a week. You're still hitting it twice a week, but you could do more.
Yeah, so Monday and Tuesday, and then Thursday and Friday, different, upper, lower, upper, lower.
Every morning you run and do your yoga? Is that what you said?
Except on Monday. We have a rest day on Monday. And
right now, at least twice a week, you add in the weights, doing the weightlifting.
Yeah.
That's great.
We've tried the 7 app. We both like that a lot.
The 7 app? You mean the 7? What are you talking about?
It's an app that you can put. There's maybe 6 different producers of this app. I saw it on the New York Times a couple years ago.
Okay.
Oh, I
Yeah.
remember seeing
It's
that
12
a while back.
exercises.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you
The
do them.
7-minute app. Yeah, I think I wrote a blog post about that.
Yeah. I use it at school sometimes, especially if I want to kind of chart my students' starting point in their fitness. It's a real good indication of what they're able to do, and it doesn't make it a big deal for them. They don't feel like I'm sitting around giving them a test.
Yeah.
Right. And it's an app, and it's not you making it up.
Yeah. And it's only 30 seconds and it only takes 7, but I can get a really good idea of their stamina just from that 7.5 minutes.
We'll link to that.
So you do that periodically?
Yeah, we kind of shift it up, or if we're doing training that is not part of our regular routine, but sometimes we'll shift out. If one of us gets injured, we'll do that instead of, say, I get runner's knee occasionally. I have to then do a whole different sequence of exercises of body weight instead of weightlifting.
Okay.
So we'll kind of shift it up when we need to.
I found that 7-minute app to be really useful when traveling. So staying in a hotel where there really isn't any fitness center or anything to do. That's a great app to use.
Yeah, I usually, even in London, there's that little narrow part where you walk into a hotel where there's a bathroom to the side and then you walk down into the room itself. That's just big enough for a yoga mat. So I bring yoga mats every time I go to London, and London is my favorite place to run. Hyde Park is my favorite place to run. They have a special kind of gravel that must have some kind of rubber in it because you just bounce. It is so wonderful.
Huh. So I do virtual bike riding, and I've been riding my bike virtually in London, and I thought I never realized how hilly London is until I started riding this bike.
You'll have to ride through Hyde Park and see if your tires enjoy the bounciness.
Yeah, wouldn't
as
that be
much
nice?
as, the gravel. That's very cool. Very cool.
I've only dared to do bikes in London once. I'm terrified of bicycling. I'm terrified of traffic. And
right.
But we went once for Christmas, so none of the buses were running. Nobody was really driving, and I dared to borrow one of the bikes, and we drove around East London with the bikes. That was fun.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So you've talked about your students. What do you teach that you're giving them using the 7-minute app with them?
Oh, I teach movement for stage, and I have another subject called theater production. And if I'm lucky enough to have both subjects, we do a physical theater production. And I check and see what the students can do. We do a lot of acrobatics if they're up for it. If they're not up for it, we do a lot of other kinds of physical work. It's required. I have a curriculum. And for example, on the curriculum, it says they have to be able to share weight. It's kind of a vague curriculum. So they do a lot of things that look like acro yoga. Some of my students can do that. And the ones who can't, we work on different kinds of physical expressions. So
that would be how, when you go to a play that people are doing, whether it's like sword fighting or I don't know, acrobats or acrobatic things or.
Yeah, my colleague actually does sword fighting. I don't know anything about it, but she teaches that. What I do is more, it's not very popular in America yet, but it's a European tradition. It's always been a bit more physical over here. And in England right now, I think they've got some of the best physical theater companies. For example, Frantic Assembly. There's a lot of things that they do where people lift each other up. You have an ensemble and one person is the character and the other people are alternately chairs and boats and stairwells, and they lift each other up and fly each other around. My students, for example, might stand in a tight group. One comes running and throws themselves on top, and the other's like a mosh pit,
right?
Called mosh pits. Yeah.
So is this where there's a screen and it's backlit, so there's shadows? So I've seen something like that in theater where it creates shapes with the shadow. Or is this without the shadows?
I've never done it with shadows. I don't have the skills for lighting, and I don't know that we have anyone at our theater who has those skills. That's hard to do.
I've never seen this kind of theater, so
yeah.
I'd love to learn more about it. It just sounds really interesting.
Yeah, Frantic Assembly is probably one of the top groups. There's another theater called Gecko Theater that is really good as well. And I know there's dozens more than I'm not going to be able to think of the names of them right now.
Sure.
But the idea is that storytelling isn't always left up to words. It's not a lot of talking heads, that you don't get a huge script. And sometimes you work backwards. You make some movements through contact improvisation, and then people look at it and say, oh, I see this story happening here in your movements. And then we build a story out of that and keep the movements that started the story.
That's really interesting.
It is. I have colleagues who teach dance who sometimes kind of say, oh, but this could be dance. But you're not a dancer. No, I'm not a dancer. If you tell me to do line dancing, I cannot do it. But I can do contact improvisation because I take my brain out of it entirely.
Well, I have a question for you. Since this is summer of 2020, how do you go through quarantining and social distancing with contact theater?
Oh, yeah, I didn't get to teach it last semester. We had started the semester. We didn't even have teaching, in class teaching. So I had to teach movement over Zoom.
Oh my gosh.
It wasn't bad. I missed teaching contact improvisation. I had to teach different skills. We talked a lot about precision of movement, making choices and dynamics of movement, so that they would film, I would say, do something that is explosive and different kinds of dynamics. And they would do the same movement 5 different ways with 5 different kinds of expression. And we'd film it and send it to me.
Oh, wow.
And then we'd look at them together and I could give feedback that way. So in some ways, it was still a good teaching experience. It just wasn't contact improvisation, and I can't have it this year. We're back at school, but things are up in the air. As you know, probably Europe's getting a lot of second waves now. We kind of forgot it was here. In this area where I am, we hadn't had a case since April.
Oh my gosh.
But people came home from vacation, and I think now we have probably 20 just locally, and we've got entire schools shut down up in the north right now again, so that it's a big wave. It's not as high as it was, but we're back towards the end of March where with the cases.
Yeah. Here in Ohio, I know a lot of schools started back up this week. So I don't know. It's just changed everything. But it's interesting to hear how you've been able to adapt your job. And, I know you're a poet and a drama person and a teacher. So does all of your activity help with creativity? How does that impact?
Oh, with staying physically healthy and physically fit for my creativity?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's if I'm having a bad day, I go for a run. If I can't run, I just go bananas. I feel not myself. I feel sluggish. I think literally, I don't know if this is true from a medical point of view, but I feel like all that lymph, that nasty stuff is just sitting in my brain. That I really feel like I need to burn it off. And it's been uncomfortable sometimes to run. Early in the pandemic, when they closed everything down mid-March, my husband and I would go running, and the trail's not narrow, but still people would go by and they couldn't make up their mind if it was dangerous not to have a mask on. If they said stay a meter away, and then they said, no, if you're running, you have to stay about 10 meters away.
Yeah, there was that whole
the breathing.
And running with a mask on is a challenge.
Yeah, there was no talk of masks here until this month, actually.
Really?
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, because the WHO didn't recommend them. So that
that was true everywhere. That at first it was you don't need to wear a mask, and then the advice changed on that.
Yeah. So when the advice changed, the government thought again. We're still not required to wear them, but they're encouraged on public transport. But we don't wear them at school, for example.
Oh, that's the challenge here, is making students and teachers trying to teach a class with everyone wearing a mask.
Yeah, I think everyone's still trying to navigate all this, even though it's been around this area since March and now it's August. There's still so many new things.
Oh.
It's easy to get complacent and ignore it. Anyway, I just appreciate you talking about how you're dealing with all of this, because I think all of the listeners, one way or another, are trying to figure out how to stay strong, fit, active during the pandemic. I'm the same way. If I sit around too much, and I don't think of it as the lymph building up, I think of my blood getting sluggish, and maybe that's lymph. I don't know, but something about the Netflix binge. I just want to watch another episode instead of get out and do something.
Yeah.
So it's very, very encouraging to me to listen to other podcasts and talk to people like yourself about how you're coping with all of this. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. No, this is uniquely difficult, I think, for me this year. I mean, not unique to me, but maybe to a lot of women who are in the place I am, where I'm just this spring gone through menopause or going through menopause.
Mm-hmm.
So that Corona came at the same time that I'm having hot flashes and a lot of stress. And then I'm not allowed to go out and exercise.
Yep.
I just think, oh, I'm falling apart now.
And it's hard to identify, well, what's normal menopause and what's the effect of the corona? And is it just this or is it just that? And it's really a combination of all of these things.
Yeah.
Because menopause is hard enough to go through.
Hearing in the news that, my students, they're under 20, they're allowed to do anything they want. They can touch each other in class. But since I'm older, I'm not allowed to touch anyone and everyone has to be careful of me. And it's new.
I had a really hard time with that. I was so irritated with if you're over a certain age that, you're somehow, I felt like they were saying I was fragile, and I could say, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
But I really struggled with that mentally on the whole age thing.
What did you do about that? How did you process that?
I sort of at times just ignored it, and I just did what I was going to do. So you start to think about all of the different risk factors. I guess this is how I processed it. So it's so rather than just being emotional about it, I sat down and I thought, all right, these are all the risk factors. How many of these do I actually have? Because age was only one.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, so for my age, I'm actually pretty healthy. And I don't think this is as big a deal for me as it might be for somebody else the same age, but who also has a number of these factors. And then also it sort of, I think just adjusted to it a bit. I will say so one of the local stores had special shopping hours for people, for older people.
Mm-hmm.
And I went one time and I thought, I'm never doing this again. It was horrible.
Why?
Because it was like everyone, I don't know, they were
20 years older than you.
They were, well, yes. And so it was actually more crowded because everyone had gone.
Oh.
And I didn't enjoy it. I guess I will say that. So I quit doing that. I just thought I'll just go at times when I think it's less likely to be busy, and this will be better.
Yeah.
Well, I've been doing a lot of online shopping because I don't like to shop anyway. So I'll order my groceries and go pick them up and just talk to the person through my window. Go ahead and sign for me, because I do feel more vulnerable. Although I'm very healthy, my concern is more around getting the virus, not knowing I have the virus, and transmitting it to those that I love without realizing it. So even though I don't think I have a lot of risk factors, I think I need to be super careful.
Yeah.
It's just one of those, everyone thinks of it different ways, I guess.
Yeah.
But it does bug me when people say you're old, so you have to be more careful. But on the other hand, the hour, it's sort of like the 50,000 mile checkup on your car, or in my case, the 63,000 mile checkup on your car. Things do start to wear out.
Yes.
And I can't ignore that I really have been on the planet for a while here.
Yeah.
Well,
during Corona, I have students who were maybe not going to be able to finish the school year from home. So I had 3 of them at the house every day, following all of the rules that we're supposed to follow. We had a meter apart and all of those kinds of lots and lots of anti-bac. But every night, almost every night, I had a nightmare that I thought I was awake and I thought I was coughing with a fever and that I was sick, and would wake up in the morning and go, oh, I'm not sick. It's okay. But I was afraid I was going to give it to the students.
Oh, yes.
Sure.
Also a hugger. So it's still so hard.
Yeah.
I thought it was all this tension. So I've been feeling so much stress. I've got a son who's off in the military and having no control. So I finally went in. I had a nervous anxiety attack, I think. They thought it might have been a stroke, and they did contrasts and MRIs and everything. And it turns out that all of this tension in the muscles, I've actually managed to get rid of the lumbar curve because the muscles are so tight from so much stress that I have moved my bones.
Oh, my.
And my chiropractor and my doctor say that, no, it's normal osteoarthritis for your age.
Oh.
And that's such a hard thing to hear. And you'd think that when nothing was wrong, you'd be happy to hear nothing's wrong, everything's normal, but I want to be better than normal. I want to have the neck of a 20-year-old. If not outside, at least inside. I work so hard.
Right.
But
right. I understand that.
Yeah. It's so hard to admit that, okay, so I am at an age where I have arthritis in the neck. What does this mean for me now? I have to do all these extra rehabilitation exercises.
And it inhibits your yoga, I'm sure.
Yeah, right now some of the yoga's good, but say a shoulder stand like you were talking about before, that's that is probably one of the worst things I could do right now.
Yeah.
Mostly lying on a towel at night is what I do.
Well, yeah, that
rolled up underneath my neck.
I've heard of that as a way to get rid of some of the same problems. And, we like to ask the people that we interview on our podcast about their fitness, and particularly, how do you define the word fit?
Yeah, I have to define it every year. When my students come in, I have to talk about fitness and lifestyle and what an actor needs to stay fit. And I do talk about that test where you stand up and you sit down and you stand up again without putting your hands on the floor.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, the nice thing of doing it with teenagers is I can say, if you can't do this, you can fix it. You have plenty of time. But I say my definition of fitness is that you are comfortable in your body and you are able to do what you want to do without any unnecessary pain. When it comes to fitness, if you feel I have to walk up and down 4 flights of stairs at school every day, if there's no medical reason that I can't do that, then I need to be able to do that comfortably. So that I try to leave it pretty subjective.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys know the woman Joan on Instagram, Joan McDonald, who is in her 70s and this amazing weightlifter.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think I aim for that because I don't have enough time in my life to devote for that. That kind of fitness isn't necessary for my life. But I feel that I'm fit for the life that I have if I'm comfortable and I can do all of the things. I can stand on my head in front of the students and say, hey, look, you can do this. You can try. If I can do it, you can try. That's important to me.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's change our focus a little bit. You sort of talked about how you're eating. I also saw that you're studying nutrition counseling.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just curious about, how do you eat and tell me about that.
I really, like I said, I follow the Whole30 pretty much.
Okay.
I don't eat any grain products with the exception of, oh gosh, I can't even remember the name of it. That's embarrassing. If I go to a Ethiopian restaurant, they have this wonderful fermented bread that's made from a grain that has not been processed and breeded out over the years. It's kind of an old type of grain that still has a lot of nutrients, and then it's fermented and then they bake it. It's a kind of flat bread. I can eat those things, but I don't eat any processed breads. So even when they say whole wheat bread, I don't eat anything like that at all.
Okay.
I don't eat soy sauce because it has wheat in it. I don't eat anything with added sugar, which is just about everything you can buy unless you're walking around the outside of the grocery store and you're buying from the produce and the meats sections. Sometimes I get canned tuna, but I have to be careful. And sometimes even buying raw chicken, I have to be careful because raw chicken, sometimes to keep the water in, they put sugar in it so that raw chicken sometimes already has added sugar.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that. I've always assumed raw chicken.
Yeah.
I thought salt, but I didn't know sugar.
Canned tuna could have sugar added to it?
Here. Yeah. I remember I
Okay.
had a colleague who was so sweet. One year he bought everybody Christmas presents and he knew I didn't have chocolate. So he didn't buy me chocolate. He bought me a can of sardines.
Uh-huh.
But the can of sardines had 4 sugar cubes in it worth of sugar.
Oh no.
He was literally
So it's
sweet.
hidden. Yeah.
Oh.
And I wouldn't have liked it anyway because I haven't had sugar. So to me, a carrot is extremely sweet.
Oh.
So I had been eating like this for 9 years. And then I noticed finally that the medical school in Norway is offering a nutrition counseling course that was in line with what I really believed. It was the pyramid turned upside down. But they also teach all of the diets that people like the blood type diet and all these things that I don't have any faith in, but that some people do. And kind of just so the facts that you know about them and about balancing hormones and how all of these nutrients, for example, not a nutrient, but for example, a raw potato, if you have a baked potato and then you let it cool and then you heat it again, the molecular structure changes so that it's no longer a simple carbohydrate that will break down as quickly. You won't get the same kind of insulin rush that you get from a potato that's just been cooked once and still hot when you eat it. Does that make sense?
So twice baked potatoes are different.
Yeah.
But yeah, without adding all the
Yeah.
twice baked potatoes with the cheese and
Right.
the
But even a twice baked potato, the molecular structure has changed. So when you look up what a potato is or a baked potato is, it's not the same if you baked it and then you heated it again. That's what you're saying? Is that right?
Yeah, that what it takes, how the body breaks it down will be different. The nutrients don't change. Nothing like that changes often. But I'm trying to remember which one. For example, carrot juice, I think. There's a difference between eating a carrot and drinking a carrot. And one of them, you don't get much out of it.
Right. Well, there's no fiber. You take all the fiber out, it's just juice.
But it's also got to do with at certain temperatures, certain things lose some of their structure so that the body can't process it. Or I'm trying to find out a lot of the details, but I don't want to teach and I don't want to be a nutrition counselor. I want to know for myself because I find it fascinating the way food is and that people in different cultures. And in Polynesia, I think, for example, it was like an 85% carbohydrate diet. And then the Inuit, people thought they didn't eat any carbohydrates, but then they found out that they would ferment the blood of the animals so that they got carbohydrates and sugar from the fermented blood somehow. And there's things we don't know. Nope, there is no one way to eat.
right.
And there never has been. The caveman diet is definitely not for everyone on the planet.
Well, yeah. So did eating that way, following the Whole30 way of eating, well, obviously you had good results from it or you wouldn't still be doing it.
Yeah, I started it for my mood, though. I mean, I started running because I wanted to get in shape physically. I wanted to look better and feel better. But the eating and changing my diet, I don't think I realized how much that would change my body, but it changed my mood immediately. And now, for example, if somebody sneaks in soy sauce to a meal, I actually will experience about 20 minutes later, I'll start to get anxiety and feel bad. So it's not worth it to me. I've heard that people who shift over to this kind of eating will experience that and then think, oh, it was a bad thing to cut everything out because now I feel this. But in my case, at any rate, I felt that all along. I just didn't notice it as an isolated event, if that makes sense.
Right. You didn't realize that was something you were eating that was making you feel that way.
Right. Or even realized that because I was on a steady diet of feeling that way, I didn't notice I felt that way until I felt better. And then when I didn't, I noticed it. Yeah.
So do you drink coffee? You don't drink coffee.
I do, but I have to be careful. I drink 2 cups in the morning.
Okay.
But I have to stop by around 11.
Yeah. And what about dairy products?
I took it out for about 3 months, maybe even a little bit longer. And I discovered that I can do without sugar without any kind of problem. I can forego ice cream. I can forego cakes. But cheese is really hard for me to cut out.
We were just discussing cheese in one of the Becoming Ellie posts. In the group, we talk about things like this.
Yeah, someone said they said they were a vegetarian because they couldn't be vegan because they just can't give up the cheese.
That's me too.
Well, I'm thinking, if it's people our age, you remember that commercial that was on when we were little, that cheese, glorious cheese.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that?
Back to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's this refrain in the back of my head. I swear I was brainwashed by the dairy culture in America.
Well, I could sing jingles to
cheese
lot. Love my good and plenty, Charlie's. It's like the jingles were the thing when we were kids, for sure.
Yeah. And then my grandmother made grilled cheese sandwiches for me. I connect grilled cheese sandwiches with my grandmother. Yeah, same grandmother. She would butter it on both sides, and none of it makes sense. Right. Yeah, so but if I start to feel bad, if I start to put on weight, I have to cut down on dairy.
Well, if you were going to give advice to our listeners, knowing that they're women over 50 primarily, what would be the advice about being fit and strong? What would you say to them?
I would say don't be afraid. I remember when I started running, I was 44, and I kept thinking, I would, honest to God, go to bed at night and think, what if I'm going to die of a heart attack because of what I'm doing? The man I was married to at the time, he would roll his eyes. He thought it was a bad thing for me doing. He kept saying, oh, you're not young anymore. And I did fear. I was so afraid. Even after I went to the doctor and got a checkup, I was afraid I was going to hurt myself because I was pushing too hard. I was trying to be something I wasn't, that it was too late. I think that that's the biggest barrier, is kind of, what if I fail, people will make fun of me. If I try to lose weight and anybody knows and I don't, then I'm going to be seen as a failure. I think we have a lot of fears that stop us, or at least I do.
I think that's true for many of us.
You hear a lot of voices in your head, that reminders or different things people have said that come back to kind of haunt you. So so having the courage to try new things.
I saw something recently where a person was talking about just basically this, of wanting to get in shape and lose weight, and felt they were too old. And you want to know how old they were? They were 30.
Oh my.
And I mean, so I was like, well, of course you're not too old. But I thought that's just the power of our brains to tell us things like that you're just not good enough. When you're 30, obviously you're not 16, but obviously it's not too late. I think you're right. We just all struggle with those fears.
Yeah, and I still wonder about that. I teach teenagers. They're always breaking something, twisting something. They're always injured. And I keep thinking, well, every time I get injured, do I automatically say it's because I'm old?
No. So, well, maybe you do. I don't know. But if you're 17, you don't say that. You might say, I'm clumsy.
Or I'm not being careful.
Or you just say, hey, I got hurt.
Yeah.
But I think when you injure yourself, it does take us longer to recover a bit. And it's so demoralizing to be thrown out of your routine.
Well, that's why I liked hearing how you have modified your routine on the few times that you have been injured, whether you're running or it's something else that's happened. You really switch it up and keep doing something that continues to improve your fitness. That's very cool.
Yeah, I'm very lucky I will say I have a partner who is very supportive, and I feel very lucky that I don't have to do it by myself. But it also helps to have a group and like the forum for Becoming Ellie. It is important.
I wanted to ask you, do you think that there's anything specific that you could share with our listeners that you've gotten out of the Becoming Ellie group that maybe would entice them to want to join?
Yeah, I think I would love for the group to be a bit more active. I feel that people reach out and sometimes follow-ups get lost. We have such busy lives, and somebody will say they're starting a new project. It is so great to see other people setting goals and saying that they're ready and they want to be part of a community that thinks positively. And I think a lot of us need that because we don't always get that at home. I think that's the most inspiring thing for me is to also hear what other people think about the podcast, what they thought was interesting, because it might be something flew right by me while I was thinking about something else.
I've noticed that some of the things that people take away from a podcast episode is not always what I am taking away. So that's valuable.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I know I like to gain some motivation and inspiration from the group, and there's different members that post things, and it's something I never thought of that, wow, that's fun, that's neat, that's something that I could do that I would love to do. So
yeah, that is exciting when people post what their exercise routines are, that is really fun to see.
Maybe we should ask that specifically. Tell us what your exercise routine is. So if our listeners wanted to follow you online or contact you in some way, where would they go? How would they find you?
Oh, I think the most relevant place, because I doubt everyone here is really into weird poetry. I have a quasi-secret yoga Instagram account. I am not an influencer. I don't want to be. It's for fun, and I follow other people who are real people. Some of them are retired psychologists who just do yoga seriously, but don't take it seriously, if that makes sense. Yeah. So it's called Orphan Yogini-ish.
Orphan?
Yogini-ish.
Yogini-ish. All right, I'll put a link in the show notes so that we can follow you and get the enjoyment of this.
Could you just spell that for me?
Yeah, I have to write it while I say it or I'll do it wrong. OrphanYogish.
That's what I wrote down. That's great. Orphan Yogini-ish.
Yeah, I'm not a yogini. I'm not good enough to be a yogini. I'm kind of yogini-ish.
An orphan being like the only one?
Yeah, because I don't follow any guru. I'm actually really guru averse. I pull what I need to. I'm a secular Buddhist. I have a hard time with those kinds of traditionally kind of masculine hierarchies. Right. So I don't have a guru.
Well, we'll put your link in our show notes. And gosh, Ren, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Oh, thank you. It's nice to talk to you both.
It was really nice to hear your voice and get a chance to know you a bit better.
Yeah, thanks so much. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, I'll be listening.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Ren, for talking with us today. I loved getting to talk with a Becoming Ellie community member.
Yes, that was special. I thought it was particularly interesting that she has really changed the way she eats, and it sounds like it's really working for her as well.
Yeah, that was interesting. She's done it for quite a while, so she obviously found something that works. That's great. I also thought her honeymoon sounded amazing.
Yes, quite different than a normal, well, I don't want to say normal, quite different than what you might picture. Traditional, that's the right word. Yeah, it sounded quite fun, actually.
It did. It sounded a lot of fun. And I think you found the right partner if you're both up to doing that.
Yeah, well, it sounds like they're both very fit and they work out together. So I hope that our listeners will share with us what they're doing for their fitness as well.
Yeah, and perhaps if they found a good way to eat, they could let us know that too. Hey, if you're listening and you're at the Becoming Ellie website, be sure to subscribe for updates on everything we're doing. You can also find lots of great information and things to download there.
And besides the website, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and Instagram. We'd love to hear from you at whatever social media place you prefer.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends about us and show them how to access podcasts if you need to.
And if you want, you can also leave a review on iTunes. We'd appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. Join us for the next episode of Fit Strong Women Over 50.
Yeah, see you next time. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.